I'm Amy, and I have experienced racism.
I'm Lexi, and I've experienced racism.
Naomi, and I've experienced racism.
I have experienced racism.
Hello, my name is Allison, and I have experienced racism.
My name is Mia, and I've experienced racism.
I'm Blessing, and I've experienced racism.
Hi, I'm Sam, and I have experienced racism.
My name is Jolie, and I've experienced racism.
I'm Megan, and I've experienced racism.
My name is Sarah, and I've experienced racism.
Hi, my name is Gabby, and I've experienced racism.
What is institutionalized racism?
A form of racism expressed in the practice of social and political institutions.
Our country is built on it.
And we see it throughout our history, whether it's slavery in the U.S., racism in medicine, in World War II, racial profiling, racial intolerance in the church.
Even today we celebrate Columbus Day. However, only a few accepting historians know the real story.
When Christopher Columbus founded America, as we are taught in school at a young age, he really massacred millions of natives and took their land.
Also, we see through industrialization and the modernization of America that this country was built on the back of slaves.
What is systematic racism?
A theoretical concept and a reality. It is premised on the research-supported claim that the United States was founded as a racist society, that racism is thus embedded in all institutions, structures, and social relations within our society.
This is shown throughout education, sports, wealth gaps, employment, housing discrimination, and incarceration.
What is so wrong with the Confederate flag?
The creator of the Confederate flag in his own words.
In the 20th century, it was used by the Ku Klux Klan to wage a white supremacist terror campaign against black people. If we keep using the Confederate flag as a symbol of Southern pride, we also represent a symbol used to defend racism.
Make America great again? Again?
By repeating these phrases, we are establishing that what these groups did to people of color is okay.
Wait, what's wrong with our map?
At a young age, we are taught that America and Western Europe are more superior than other countries.
On the average map we see every day, the north is faced upwards, which unconsciously leads people to believe that anything on the top is better.
Whereas many non-European and non-Western countries are made out to be smaller than they actually are because we also associate size with power.
Traditional maps we see look like this. However, they should look like this in order to show us the true shape and size of the countries that make up our world.
Here, the U.S. is shown to be actually much smaller than we are traditionally taught.
From the time we are young, we are programmed to be biased towards these countries because they are said to be inferior, in quotes. This taught Americans unconscious racism.
Is racial discrimination a problem in the workplace?
Yes, it is. In 2016, almost one-third of employees witnessed or experienced racism at work.
It's not right because minorities are just trying to do what everyone wants to do. They want to work to support themselves and their families.
Imagine having to constantly be aware of signs that you might be getting treated wrongly just because of the color of your skin or where you're from.
Even though there are laws that are put in place to prevent discrimination at all stages of employment, racial bias still exists.
That's what people of color have to go through every day at work and at school and in any community they are in.
However, there are certain signs that may help to tell someone that race is an issue in their workplace, such as
being stereotyped, which portrays false generalizations and attributes certain characteristics to all members of a group or race. Example, Shonda's just lazy. I don't expect her to want to work hard.
Number 2, hostility. Victims of racism can be suspect to accusations of being out of place and not fitting in the office culture. For example, she shouldn't present to the shareholders with her hair like that. This isn't the ghetto.
Overcritical. Criticism towards employees must remain fair towards all staff, no matter the race, gender, or religion. Example, why can't he talk proper English? He's an American now.
Number 4, consistently overlooked. Many people of color tend to fail to gain as many jobs, promotions, or salary boosts as their white counterparts. For example, we will promote Chad. He represents the company better, even though Jerome has been here longer.
What's wrong with stereotypes?
All over America and the world, people are being stereotyped because of the color of their skin.
African American people have been stereotyped for years for being aggressive, violent, and a threat to the community. They have been stereotyped for something as ridiculous as loving fried chicken, grape Kool-Aid, and even watermelon.
However, it's not just African American people who are stereotyped. It's all people of color. Middle Eastern people have been characterized as dangers to Americans and threats, especially since 9/11.
Hispanic people are stereotyped as all being illegal immigrants, loud and uneducated. People often assume that all Hispanic people are maids and gardeners.
Stereotypes are bad because they restrict people. They put them into a box that is hard to get out of and make people of color feel like no matter what they do, they can't escape these titles and can't rise above these racial restrictions.
Police brutality is a form of police misconduct which involves undue violence by some police officers. Those police officers judge people as soon as they see them for the color of their skin.
When 17-year-old Trayvon Martin died at the hands of George Zimmerman in 2012, protests sprung up around the country, demanding everything from changes to Florida's Stand Your Ground laws to gun control.
When do our children get to just be children?
But one of the protests,
Black Lives Matter,
quickly took on a life of its own. The phrase Black Lives Matter was first coined in 2013 by 3 African-American women in response to George Zimmerman's acquittal. But the term didn't gain widespread use until August 9, 2014, when Michael Brown was shot and killed by a white police officer in Ferguson, Missouri. Protesters swarmed the city, holding signs that read, "Black Lives Matter." The overwhelming police response to the protests kept the slogan in the news for days. While Ferguson began to calm down, the combination of social media, ubiquitous video cameras, and the recurrence of African-American deaths at the hands of police meant that it was only a matter of time before Black Lives Matter reappeared.
On behalf of all New Yorkers, I want to offer my deepest condolences to the family and loved ones of Eric Garner.
4 months later, when a police officer was acquitted in the death of Eric Garner, an unarmed African-American man in Staten Island who was choked to death on camera, Black Lives Matter was everywhere.
Justice for Eric Garner! Justice for Eric Garner!
In the days after Garner's death, rallies were held in 5 cities, with protesters calling themselves part of the Black Lives Matter movement.
I can't breathe!
Almost a year later in Baltimore, Freddie Gray, a 25-year-old African-American man, was chased by police and later found in the back of a police van with 80% of his spine severed. Riots ensued and the damage cost an estimated $9 million.
Stand up and say loudly and clearly, Black Lives Matter.
And activists from Black Lives Matter affiliates have since confronted politicians at campaign events.
We're gonna let you on the mic. We're gonna give you the mic.
Black Lives Matter! Black Lives Matter!
The online movement has taken on a life of its own. And unlike a lot of hashtag activism, the Black Lives Matter banner has generated a sustained rallying cry for change and real-world results. When the University of Missouri came under fire for failing to address persistent complaints about racism on campus, Black Lives Matter contributed to protests that toppled the school's president.
Nobody is free until all of us are free. That's the end goal.
The movement has generated some backlash, but the core argument that African Americans aren't treated equally is backed up by statistics that show that black men are killed by police at a higher rate than white men. Until those numbers change, the Black Lives Matter movement isn't likely to go away anytime soon.
Hey NBC News fans, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down here, and then click on any of the videos over here to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives. Thanks for watching.
Those police officers use stereotypes to make irrational decisions that often lead to people, especially people of color, to wrongfully lose their lives. On April 12th, 2 African-American men went to Starbucks in Philadelphia to meet with a business associate. While waiting, they asked the manager if they could use the restroom and were refused. They continued waiting for their associate to arrive. Police officers then arrived because apparently the manager had called the police on them.
The men were then handcuffed. Their white business associate arrived and, along with the other customers, asked why they were being arrested. The police said they were trespassing. Even though the customers spoke up for the men were still arrested, but luckily were later released. This is just one example of racial bias leading to the arrest of innocent men.
However, the CEO of Starbucks, Ken Johnson, has decided that on May 29th, about 175,000 Starbucks workers will receive racial bias training. Racial bias training should be given to any person whose job is to work with the public, such as postal workers, police officers, salespeople, and even teachers.
What can you do to help change our country for the better?
I think we can all agree that there's been really an eye-opening hour for all of us. This has certainly opened my eyes to new perspectives, and I hope the same goes for everyone. But the question still remains, are we too sensitive? Did I expect this to solve racism today? No. Did I expect this to put a huge dent in it? No. I just wanted it to open up a discussion. That's all it is. And that's the only way we're ever going to solve racism. See, until we start caring about one another and empathizing and sympathizing with a person that's different from us, none of this is ever going to change. I grew up in an all-black neighborhood. The first time I had any real dealings with whites on a regular basis was at Kent State University, when I walked into a room and I had 3 white roommates. So 2 weeks later, after sharing space with these guys at room, I happened to be walking through the lobby. All 3 of my roommates were in line. I didn't know what the line was, so I walked up to them. I said, hey, man, what y'all doing? What y'all going? What y'all signing up for? They kind of put their heads down, and then I saw the sign, room change. That kind of hurt me a little bit, because I went, damn, man, y'all just don't want to live with me? And then one of them, who's an attorney now, and he and I are friends to this day, he said, hey, man, I just don't know how to live with a black person. I said, well, probably going to have to get used to it, because I think there's a lot of us here, and I think we're going to be here for a while. And so then he said, hey, man, but can we still be friends? I said, for sure. I learned a valuable lesson from them guys, and I think they learned something from me. But you know what I did? I forgave them. I didn't even really understand forgiveness. I just knew that they didn't understand me. But it's okay. One of them said, man, unless you change, you ain't going to ever be nothing. Because I was just so immersed in where I was from. Well, I hope he has a television set. Because I did change, and if we all change, we can all be something. We can all be something better than we are if we are just only willing to change. Change and forgive. Thank you so much. Thanks, everybody, for being so honest.
Racism in America might never end, but with one step at a time, everyone can help to make a difference.